Theodore is currently the best garrison captain in Call of Dragons, and in this video, we're going to go over everything you need to know, the best talents, artifact, pet, and pairings. So stick around in this video for the ways that you can activate Theodore to smash your enemies. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisco Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons. And as you can see, based on my skill distribution on Theodore, I really have not worked on him much, and that is because he is from the Strongest Lord event. However, if you need to garrison stuff in your season of Call of Dragons, which is uncommon, you'd need to garrison your city perhaps, or a pass, but if you do need to garrison, I think Theodore is hands down the best garrison we currently have. Now, this could change around a little bit when infantry are released into the game that counter. But until that happens, you should enjoy the insane powerhouse that Theodore is. And he's good both in the field and in the garrison. So first thing we're going to do is review the skills and why he is strong. From there, we'll talk probably about talents and pairings, pets, and artifacts. There's honestly a lot to do for a commander or hero, so let's get started. The active skill does 1400 damage factor and reduces the health of the target by 30%. You know, the funny thing about this is that it makes him a good city rally as well, because it turns out that a 30% health reduction to every unit in an enemy city is pretty good. But that's not really what he's designed for. He's designed for city defense, and we'll get to that in a second. From here, second skill, giving you a defense boost of 30% and a march speed boost of 10%. Look, at the end of the day, cavalry get focused out. So the defense boost is really fantastic. The third skill is your stronghold-based skill. So if you're working on your Theodore and you want to get like more value for fielding specifically, you unlock to the second skill, okay? You'll max the first skill, unlock the second skill, max the second skill, then unlock to all skills being available, then deploy more skill points. The reason you do this is you can't actually choose where the skills go, all right? So this third skill, when you're in a city or a stronghold, and you are either the primary or secondary commander, your legion has a 20% chance to gain vigor, that's 10% hit points, and attack resistance of 10% when you're hit by an attack. So this triggers more frequently if you're getting swarmed. It's got a 3-second internal cooldown. When hit by an attack is how we know that when you're getting swarmed, that's more chances to trigger this ability. I believe it's every single thing doing a basic attack onto you that will give you that 20% chance to trigger this ability. So very good anti-swarm garrison. From here, fourth skill, each time Theodore inflicts a debuff on an enemy via a hero skill, not from a talent, but from a hero skill, he'll gain 1 stack of Council's Mark. You can get 3 stacks of Council's Mark. Now, all stacks of this Council's Mark are consumed when Theodore casts a rage skill, increasing the damage by that skill, or of that skill, I assume. And that is a damage bonus of 20% per stack consumed. And your Council's Marks are reset when the battle ends. So how does that work? I mean, we'd have to look in the logs, but the way I think this works is the first time Theodore uses his active skill, presumably this debuff application will count toward the next use of the coup de grace, clearing all these debuffs. So anyways, regardless, this is going to give you 1 stack over here from skills. But Theodore doesn't have any other ways in his skills to apply debuffs. So you're going to need a secondary commander that applies debuffs. Spoiler alert, there's really only one cavalry commander, and that's Ferondil. And Ferondil was released with Theodore. I mean, it's just not a coincidence they're supposed to be paired together. The last thing you see here is a 25% reduction from normal attack damage, which is like a really, really hard counter of cavalry against the Sindri and Freygar rally. It's actually an insane counter for the Sindri and Freygar rally. Reducing the normal attack damage you take is absolutely massive in just hard countering Sindri and Freygar. I used it. I would know. It's very, very countered. So how is it you can get 3 stacks of coup de grace to make it so that you're getting a 60% damage boost over here on your Shadowed Spite ability? Well, if you pair with Ferondil and you have him awakened, then the active skill of Ferondil will give you 1 stack. That's a hero skill inflicting the debuff Cowardice. And the awakening skill presumably also gives you 1 stack in the turn where you apply the physical defense break and the slow effect. I don't think it would give you 2. If it does give you 2, that would be pretty cool. This effect can be triggered once every 5 seconds, but when you normal attack a target that has Cowardice, you have a 50% chance of inflicting that defense break and slow effect. Okay, so spoiler alert, we know that Ferondil is going to be a good pair. Ferondil is from the Lucky Spins, but we're back to the topic of Theodore. If you want to get his tokens, you're going to have to get them from the Strongest Lord, or toward the end of Season 2, he does become available in the daily deals, and that's the point in which I started working on him. I do wonder if I'm better served by slowly working on him, and it's going to take like 3 months to max him, or if I would be better off just working on a hero that is already kind of close to being awakened. For example, Thea, although then I can't get the value from them in gold keys, or Nika, right? Like, anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm currently pulling him from the daily deals, and I think that's probably your best way to get large amounts of his tokens. Now, from here, we actually need to talk about the talents, and to show you the talents, we need to go, not to the Pet Sanctuary, as I click literally everywhere except where I want to go. We need to go into the Roots of War Battle Sync so I can show you level 60 talents. Now, the reality is that most people, well, they did change this recently. In the upcoming patch, they're making it so you can level back to 60 again, solely from PvE if you wanted. Before, it was only PvP that could take you from 50 to 60. So, good change by the devs. But when you get to 60, I think that if you're going to garrison, here is the talent build I would recommend. So you're going to ignore March Speed because you're garrisoning. You're going to get the defense and the health and the foundation talents. Then you move up. You're going to get health because you have to. And from here, I think defense is preferable to attack. Then I'm going to get Garrison's Repost. Now, this is exciting because it increases your counterattack damage. You do counterattack damage to everything hitting you. You only do normal attack damage to the thing you're directly targeting. So this should theoretically, your normal encounter should be the same amount of damage. So the counterattack damage boost is actually just way, 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 way better. So yeah, no, take the counterattack damage boost. From here, I took Thorn Barrier. So I have a chance to inflict Gloom and a defense break onto the target. And the reason I chose this is that I don't exactly know what Fair Defense does. What I think this does is that if your enemy rallies with all one specific troop type, like not all infantry, all archers, or all cavalry, but like all one faction's unit type, then you get a unit skill, and this would disable that. I honestly need to look more into Fair Defense because it's possible this is really good, and I'm not fully understanding what this does for me. But I do know that Gloom is a great effect, and a defense break is a great effect. From here, I actually went sort of up the middle to start. I took Garrison Synergy. When you're a Garrison Captain, deal 10% more hero skill damage. This will depend on who your secondary is, but I'm going to assume you pair them with a high skill damage secondary. From here, I took Arrogance. When serving as a Garrison Captain, launching a normal attack has a chance to give you 100 rage. And then I actually skipped this last talent. I came back for it later. Instead, I went for either Garrison Resistance, reducing the damage you take by 5%, or Garrison Rampage, increasing the damage you deal by 5%. Kind of depends on your philosophy. From there, instead of taking the healing ability, which seemed really weak to me, unless you are in, I will say, unless you are in Roots of War and you're getting swarmed, then Sacred Realm is really good. Otherwise, Formidable is the play here. While serving as a Garrison Captain, casting rage skills inflicts inhibition, reducing their hero's skill damage dealt. Now, this won't do anything if you're up against a Sindri and Freygar, so just be mindful of that. And after I finished off this tree, then I doubled back and I picked up Grumpy, giving me more rage. That is an amazing name for a talent, by the way. Garrison Resistance. I took Tough Garrison, reducing the skill damage you take. Again, keep in mind that doesn't help you versus Sindri and Freygar. And lastly, I put just a couple points here into Garrison Determination. taking less normal attack damage. You could alternatively deal more normal attack damage if you prefer over here. I think that all of these talents are just better than going for the slight boost over here. Like, think about it. Yeah, this is only one talent point, but I got to get some suboptimal stuff over here in order to get literally an 8% damage boost the next time your secondary is casting an active skill. I mean, like, here's a 5% damage boost all the time. I get that it cost me 5 points, but like that's really, 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 really good. So the garrison tree is just nutty. It's so nutty that I don't think you put a single point anywhere else if you're garrisoning. But if you're fielding, I think you go for the skill tree. So in this instance, for fielding, we go and we get overall speed now instead of the defense. We go into the skill tree because the skill tree, in my opinion, is very cracked. It's very, very strong. You can even garrison with the skill tree, and you'd be surprised how good that is. So from here, you get intimidation, increasing your hero's skill damage. Again, this depends on your secondary, but we'll talk about that. Head held high for the rage, and I doubled down on rage gain with Spirit of Rage. This is a little bit debatable. I think you could totally go for Boiling Blood. It all depends on your approach to firing off, your active skills more frequently. There's just a bunch of ways to slice that. I really like generating rage. More rage means more skills means more damage, and I already have lots of ways to boost my skill damage. So from here, I took Detached. Your Legion deals 4% less normal attack damage, but you deal 8% more hero skill damage. Like I said, you got a lot of ways to boost your hero skill damage. Then we get Focus, increasing your hero skill crit rate periodically, and then increase our hero skill critical damage. From there, I took Thirst for Blood, and you may be like, why would you take that instead of going for Caged Animal? In my perspective, you want to hit really hard pretty quickly. So I think Thirst for Blood, especially because when you charge an enemy with a cavalry unit, you can get a full rage bar if it's a ranged unit. You just want to crank out a lot of damage there. That, by the way, is the justification for using Boiling Blood. But I also find that, look, you're going to get multiple skill cycles, but you're not going to get like dozens of skill cycles, right? Which Caged Animal is really good with mages. It's less good with cavalry. That's what I'm trying to say. So from here, we're going to go into the cavalry tree. Then we're going to get Egoism, which reduces the hero skill damage you're taking by 4%. Then I went and I increased my hero skill damage dealt by 4%. And then I took Perfect Ferocity. When you enter battle, my hero skill damage boosted by 15% for 10 seconds. So we are just going to really hit him with a ton of skill damage. And then I had 1 point remaining. I put it into Marksman Counter Tactics because, hey, you want to smash Marksman? There you go. Alternatively, there's a lot of places you could put it. You could generate Rage. I mean, there's so many good talent points spread throughout this tree. It's actually really surprising. So skill tree is cracked. That's what I would recommend if you're going to use Theodore. This talent is pretty debatable. You could totally go over here instead for Boiling Blood. But all in all, I think this is the build I would use if I'm going to smash in the open field. Now, my game plan with Theodore, honestly, would be to use him in the garrison. But that's neither here nor there, because I haven't maxed him out yet, and there's very few times where you actually do need to garrison. So if you are going to run around with him in the field as the primary, who do you use as the secondary? And I think you have so many great choices. First of all, Ferondale, great choice. Obviously, these two were designed to be together. Smash them together, and you're off to the races, truly. From there, I think your next best options are going to be Bakshi and also Emrys. Both of them work really, really well and will influence, to some extent, what pet you use. But otherwise, there aren't a lot of changes I would make to the configuration. I mean, Bakshi has the skill tree, but I don't think you need him to be the primary. In fact, because Theodore does a health reduction to the enemy, you generally want Theodore to be the primary and another skill damage dealer to be the secondary to take advantage of the fact that you just reduced the enemy's health, and then boom, hit him with 1500 damage factor. Or Emrys, boom, hit him with 1500 damage factor. That's the idea. Now, there are other commanders you could consider, like you could consider Hosk, but I don't think the synergy is all that strong between them. Hosk is not a skill damage dealer, and you really, I think, want to focus on skill damage with your Theodore if we're talking about the open field. The same is sort of true of Thea. Like, she'll boost your skill damage, and I guess if you were using Eagles, like, you can do some cute stuff here, but I would not rate this as one of the top combos because she's doing shielding instead of skill damage herself. Similarly, I mean, Hey, Craig is always in style, especially if you were to use Eagles. You would actually be surprised, although you aren't flying. There is a lot of skill synergy here. Like, the units are flying, but your March will not be flying because Theodore is grounded. But, like, Craig actually giving you AoE skill damage would be surprisingly, strangely good. And, of course, you always have Alistair at the epic tier, who also does area of effect damage. He also has a way to gain passion. So when he has over 50% of the units remaining, you have a 20% chance to gain riposte and passion when you launch your normal attacks. So passion is really important for generating rage and is super relevant for your pet choice. So with all that said, I mean, look, there's other pairings you could do like Eliana, for example. But if you're defending a stronghold, I think your best bet is probably going to be Ferondil as the secondary. So, you know, we know the synergy there is really strong. This skill only works while he's in the field, which is a little bit of a bummer. But otherwise, I mean, if you've got a Cavalry Legion, and you do, it's pretty good. I suppose the downside here is that for a long-running battle, Ferondil's 4th skill is going to fade. That actually kind of sucks. So maybe your better choice if you're garrisoning would actually be Bakshi. Bakshi is just like shockingly good in a lot of situations. I think I might actually steer you toward the Bakshi. So Theodore Bakshi might be the way to go if you're going to garrison a pass. If you're garrisoning your city, you're going to have all troop types present. So you can kind of do whatever you think is going to deal the most damage. I mean, this video is really not about city defense. But if I were to be defending my city right now, like, funny enough, I might still use Theodore Bakshi if I had Theodore maxed. Because the Bakshi is like, yeah, it's really good. Increasing your hit points by 30% is really good for 5 seconds when you have all troop types in your city. Like, yeah, that's really cracked. I actually think I just stick with Theodore Bakshi. Heck, even over here, right? Increases your attack and defense by 30% periodically. Well, you have all troop types, so that's your infantry, your archers, your cavalry, your mages. So, I mean, that is 240% of total stats put together. 60% for unit types. I mean, anyways, we can talk about that in perhaps another video, but the Bakshi combo there for the city defense seems really good to me. So, with regard to your war path, let's make our way back over here, and there's one obvious choice. I mean, if you're fielding and you're pairing with Ferondil, then the pick is the Berserk Phaedrake. I mean, it's all about debuffs. You're actually doing a debuff with the skills here. So I really like this pet if you're going to use Ferondil. The key to using a Berserk Phaedrake is that I think you also want Fierce Attack, and at that point, things that enhance your pet's skill damage dealt is pretty good. Also, if you are using the skill talent tree for Theodore as the primary, increasing your hero's skill crit rate is good because you, remember, have increased their crit damage as well from talents. So worth considering. I also really like, you know, the defense break and also bristles over here, reducing the enemy's attack, make you a little more tanky. The alternative, however, if you use either Bakshi or Emrys or really any hero that is a passion hero, then you want to use the Golden Rock. And the Golden Rock is going to do damage when you're gaining passion, which is a big deal. Same sort of story applies here. You want Fierce Attack, things that are going to enhance your pet skill damage is good in this instance. I also really like Feral Exuberance, very powerful effect here. So I am currently working on a 1-star Golden Rock, got that recently-ish, and I haven't done anything yet since we know in this upcoming patch we're going to get some potential changes to pets. So those are probably your 2 best bets for pets. One pet that you could always consider is a Sand Lizard. I currently use my Sand Lizard with Sindrian and Freygar. However, the Sand Lizard is doing a bunch of healing. So if you can stack a bunch of units on top of each other, and you're going to do that regularly, I think a Sand Lizard is a must take to that party. I suppose the final pet consideration at this moment in time, like maybe you could do a Venomous Lizard, but I really dislike this. It's very passive. Like you have to be getting hit to really make this trigger. So I think that, even though you're not flying, your two best bets are flying pets, and that is the Berserk Phaedrake and the Golden Rock, depending on your pairing. So this brings us to the artifact section, and there are a ton of viable artifacts. I will argue that Spring Blades is probably your best bet, especially if you're pairing with Bakshi. That is going to give you the Passion Effect. The Passion Effect then gives you Keen, which is a 30% attack boost. So Spring Blades are currently BIS. I think it's the best in slot for Cavalry. Alternatively, if you are pairing with Ferondale and you think you want to go for it, you could do the Oath of the Storm Peak. I have seen 0 people using this. Would I personally use this? I would say only if I'm able to max it from a Forge of Light in which I was going for the other artifact and I happen to be getting Oath of the Storm Peak anyways. Otherwise, I am going to pass on this one personally. The advantage here is that every time you do Cowardice, you're going to get a 10% damage dealt boost, and you've got the ability to clone your Legion. But just keep in mind that cloning your Legion at this moment in time takes a really high APM to use effectively. It is my understanding that after this upcoming patch, there are a number of artifacts where they will no longer disrupt what you're actively doing. So, for example, this is another cavalry artifact. I'll get ahead of myself, but the Wolfwoman of Healer and the Storm Arrows would currently interrupt what your unit is doing, and then you have to reissue a command to get them to keep doing what they were doing, like marching forward or whatever. So the fact that you'll no longer have to reissue the command here could make it so that Oath of the Storm Peak is really good. So while I'm here, I'll talk about Storm Arrows and Wolfwoman of Healer, which, look, you can use these to navigate large chunks of terrain, typically not to charge at an enemy, but there's 2 uses. One is to cross a river or a mountain. The other is to get in front of an enemy that's retreating, and then you physically block them, and that is really powerful. So the Wolfwoman of Healer, however, is going to teleport you back to your original location, either when you activate it a second time or at the end of the 15-second window, and you can circumvent that by going into a city or a resource node. So there's advantages and disadvantages to the Wolfwoman of Healer. It is giving cavalry unit hit points. That will make you really tanky, whereas Storm Arrows is giving you attack, which is generally, I would say, preferred for the role of cavalry, where you're trying to ambush and not be taking a lot of damage anyways. Now, this brings us to 2 tried and true cavalry artifacts that you love to see. That includes the Kingslayer, which freaking slaps, big damage all the way through and through, immediately executes units with 10% of units or lower remaining. Alternatively, if you need to march speed balance, which I have done before, then the Sorlin's Blade is really great. 18% march speed on there can help you elevate the speed of a slower unit. You even get speed after you activate it, but I find that to never be the reason I'm activating it. The reason I'm activating it is to do damage. Never do I think, I better get speed now, because, at that point, you're committed to the combat, and the rage cost is so low that you've typically activated it just really quickly. So, theoretically, you could activate it to try and get away. I'm just saying I've never, in my entire time playing the game, felt like that was why I was using it. All right, so a lot of really good artifacts here for cavalry. And, look, we're talking about Season 2 by the time you're getting access to Theodore as a commander or hero, so I feel comfortable recommending the legendaries, and I don't think we need to, at this point, talk about the epics. You're probably have one of these legendaries unlocked, and it's probably worth using the legendary, because even at a low skill level, it probably is going to outclass the epic, if I had to guess. So that covers the things you need to know about Theodore, who is stronger than I expected, particularly in a garrison. So you can see with my choices that he wasn't a priority for me. And why is that? 1, you don't garrison all that much. And 2, when you're fielding in the most important fights, I find cavalry to not be my unit that I'm going to. Cavalry will get melted. They're not tanks. So the only room you've got for your front line in a proper large fight is infantry. And your back line has to be firing at a safe distance, and you typically don't have a way to ambush somebody from behind with cavalry without getting totally wrecked when their whole backline ball turns on you. So the role of cavalry is primarily backline disruption. And if you are not the Spring Wardens, then like Theodore and, all the other cavalry are way more important, because then you're going to really use things like Storm Arrows and Wolfwoman of Healer to get into some advantageous spots and ambush unsuspecting players. And that backline disruption represents a huge amount of damage you do to the enemy's hospital. But my preference is actually to use the flying heroes, and I've covered that in a separate video if you want to see why I think Spring Wardens are the freaking jam. Okay, card will be in the end screen in just a second. Alternatively, if you're looking for my full guide on Ferondale, who I'm working on, and I'll max him probably in the end of the next season, card will be in the end screen for that one in just a second. Hope you subscribe to the channel for more videos designed to help you get value and smash your enemies. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.